COVID vaccines be mandatory?
No, I don't think it should be mandatory. I wouldn't demand to be mandatory, but I would do everything in my power, just like I don't think masks have to be made mandatory nationwide.
To vaccinate or not to vaccinate? That is the question. Hello, my name is Todd. I want to thank you for tuning back into the TL Jack channel one more time. I greatly appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch another one of my videos. What I'm talking about today is the fact that back at the end of September, first part of October, my wife came home from work and she started feeling sick. And she works at a local school district here where the teachers, all but her and one or two other individuals, have not received the COVID-19 vaccine. They also wore masks all the time, required, per the governor of the state of Oregon. All teachers and students are required to wear masks. So she was in a mask, surrounded by people wearing masks, surrounded by people who have received the COVID-19 vaccine. So she came home sick or developed symptoms of an illness. It kind of came on like a cold. And then a day or two later, I started feeling sick myself. And then shortly after me, about a day or so later, two of my other children started feeling sick. And the symptoms that we were experiencing were headache, shortness of breath, some difficulty breathing, muscular and pains and joint pains, low-grade fevers, a cough, just to name some of the symptoms. And all of us, for the most part, had those similar symptoms. Some had other complaints that were different, like my son complained about pain behind his eyes. For those of us who were coughing, which was at least 4 of us, for the most part, they were unproductive cough, meaning we were not getting anything out from the lungs. But we were all complaining of the typical cold type phlegm symptoms, runny nose, so on and so forth. So what we ended up doing is going to a local doctor's office where my kids go. They operate at urgent care clinics. So we had contacted them, and so we pulled up to their parking lot, and one of their nurses came out and did a COVID test on every one of my family members. Of the 4 of us with symptoms, every last one of us were confirmed COVID-19. I did have another child. She also tested positive, but she had very minor symptoms. She had a headache, and that was about it. Nothing more severe than that. My one daughter, who's in the military, one more time, she had a negative test. She was also quarantined when she went off to basic training with 3 individuals who had come down with COVID-19 and actually had it. And she was quarantined with them because she was exposed to them, and she never developed the symptoms then. She was around 4 people who were very symptomatic and never came down with symptoms. And then, of course, my youngest daughter, who's roughly 10 years old, she also didn't test positive, nor did she have symptoms, and nor did she have symptoms down the road. So basically through October for 2 weeks, the 5 of us who had tested positive were quarantined in the house, pretty much not allowed to go anywhere. Not that we really wanted to go anywhere, because the last thing we wanted to do was spread this to someone else. And then my one youngest daughter, the 10-year-old, who had a negative test, was quarantined for almost the entire month of October, was not allowed back at school. So why am I bringing this up? Well, I'm bringing this up simply to point out the fact that my family contracted COVID-19 through my wife from her school, where most of the people there were vaccinated. She was the only unvaccinated person who developed COVID-19 symptoms and got sick from COVID-19. But there were other employees who had the quote vaccine who also got sick with COVID-19 and tested positive before my wife did. So it's quite obvious that my wife contracted COVID-19 from her coworkers while wearing a mask, and they were all wearing a mask. So that should pose the question, do masks work, and is the vaccine actually effective at preventing you from getting it? And I would say just based off that, the answer is no. That doesn't mean that all masks don't work, because I would hold to the fact that the N95 mask, according to the CDC's own website, is 95% effective against airborne viruses. So they weren't wearing those. So now let's jump ahead a ways, and the governor required, or the mayor of Portland, I should say, required that all employees get a vaccine to continue their employment. And my wife's school also chose to do the same thing. They demanded that all their employees get the vaccine to maintain their employment. But being as my family was sick with COVID-19, we are now, technically speaking, have the antibodies and immune and can't transmit it, can't carry it, we can't get it again. And yet they are still forcing my one daughter who works for East Portland Community Center as a lifeguard and my wife who's a school teacher to be vaccinated. So we submitted for both of them a request for a religious exemption based off of our religious beliefs, which I won't get into in this video. They both got them accepted. My daughter went back to work as everything was normal 2 weeks later. Worked as her lifeguard. When she was out on the lifeguard stand, she didn't wear a mask because of her respiratory issues. And that was also approved by her boss. And she also had a note from a doctor that stated she can't wear a mask and be on the pool deck because it causes difficulty breathing. So she worked for 2 weeks plus post-COVID as a lifeguard and a swim instructor, working with little kids, teaching them how to swim. And we thought that was going to be the end of it. My wife's eventually got accepted after being denied. And then all of a sudden, these requirements came out. So for my wife, she's required to now wear an N95 mask and a stupid plastic face shield. And she was required to wear that at all times. Anytime she's in the building, anytime in her classroom, she was required to do that. Eventually, my wife, not really thinking, trying to be professional, had a meeting, a Zoom meeting for an behavioral issue or an IEP, individual educational plan, since she works with special ed students. And she just took off the mask and the face shield. So number one, she could be heard. Number two, it just seems more personal and more professional to not have all this garb on blocking who you are when you're speaking. But she didn't think, and she totally spaced that they wanted her in all that stuff when she's in her classroom. So they had a special meeting for my wife, basically more or less a disciplinary action at which they're investigating, so on and so forth. And, you know, my wife did the best thing. She fell on her sword, says, hey, listen, I screwed up. I spaced it, forgot about it. So now she's got a written warning in her file for violating. The problem is her school district won't answer one all-important question. Why is she now such a danger to her coworkers and anyone else in the building, including her students, that she wasn't prior to this mandate to be vaccinated? They won't answer it. They won't answer that question. Why she's such a danger to everybody now that she's had COVID, but chooses not to get the vaccine for good reasons, actually. One of them being my father having medical issues as a direct result, and other people in our family who have had complications as a direct result of the vaccine. But she's this all-out danger, so she's required to wear all of this. Now, Portland did something else. They decided to accept Tia's exemption, although they call it an exception, but it came with a condition. She can no longer be a swim instructor because when she's in the pool, she's required to wear an N95 mask. And she can't wear a mask when she's in the pool. So therefore, they took away her job as a swim instructor, yet they claim they're accommodating her and her religious beliefs. But they, in effect, took away her job. That's not an accommodation. That's not accepting her religious beliefs and allowing her to continue to work. So for at least 3 weeks now, she's been unemployed from the city of Portland, unable to do her job. And so when I talked with the HR person, she says, well, she could still do the job as a lifeguard. She just has to wear an N95 mask. The problem is my child with her respiratory conditions, and I'm not going to get into them. It's none of your business what they are, but she can't breathe in a mask on the pool deck in a humidified room with the temperature and all the chlorine in the room. She gets severe shortness of breath. I myself, when I go to the pool, I don't wear a mask for the same problem. When I get on the pool deck, I get short of breath with this stupid mask on. In fact, I get short of breath when the mask is on, no matter where I'm at. And yet they're wanting her to be in that N95 mask, which really does restrict the breathing more than the surgical masks do, which is what she was wearing when she was in the office area. But she wasn't in a mask when she's on the pool deck. And again, the gal from the HR department for the city of Portland can't answer the one all-important question. Why is Tia now such a danger that she wasn't prior to this requirement to be vaccinated and the magical date that came and went? To be vaccinated by or you lose your job. But she kept telling me, well, we're accommodating her. We allowed her to have her religious exception, and so we've accommodated her. But they didn't, and I pointed it out. You took her job away. How's that an accommodation? What other job are you going to have her do where she can continue working? Where you're actually accommodating her religious belief of not being vaccinated and where she can wear an N95 mask without getting short of breath and having difficulty breathing. And she said, well, she could get a ADA, but we would have to authorize that first. So they sent me this information, a packet of information. One is like her questionnaire asking her what her problem is and why she's requesting ADA. And a second one, they want her to go off to a doctor and have a doctor fill this out to say, yeah, she's got a disability. But when I read the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission through our government, it's the EEOC.gov, it quite clearly states once you have been hired and started work, your employer cannot require you that you take a medical examination, which is what this basically is, or ask questions about your disability, unless they are related to your job and necessary for the conduct of your employer's business. They don't need to know why she is without a mask and has that exemption from her doctor. They don't need to know that information. It is none of their business, and according to this, they can't ask because the accommodation she's requesting isn't affecting their business. She can still rescue people in the pool when they have a problem, and she can still teach kids as a lifeguard, teaching them how to swim as a swim instructor. So we're now 3 weeks with her being unemployed. I've tried contacting our family attorney, and he hasn't gotten back to me, probably due to the fact that he's a very busy attorney himself. So now I'm out to look for an attorney who would be willing to come on my daughter's side and help her get her job, because they are 100% discriminating against her for her religious beliefs. And in my wife's situation, they were coercing her to get the vaccination under threat of losing her job. All of those things, to me, are unconstitutional. They are a violation of our discrimination laws. So in the case of Tia, she's being discriminated against because of her religious belief on the vaccine, and they're not accommodating her to do her job without these, what I would call an unreasonable accommodation, because she can't breathe when she wears a mask. It's that simple. And she definitely can't breathe in the N95 mask. It restricts the air a lot more than the surgical mask which she was wearing when she was in the office area or when she goes to school. But she's even told me there are times even at school that she has become short of breath and has had to leave and go outside to get some air because of the mask and her respiratory complication. Anyway, I just thought I'd give you that little bit of an update on what's been going on with my family. I haven't been too willing to talk about this, but I'm at my wit's end. I'm tired of hearing more and more people losing their jobs over these mask mandates, over these vaccination mandates.
How dare you!
Which the one that went in effect by Joe Biden here obviously has a stay put on it and isn't being enforced. And we're still waiting on my daughter's exemption from the U.S. military and whether or not they're actually going to grant that one or not. Haven't heard yet. And it's been well over a month since she put that in. And right now she's off on a 4-day training session. So I guess we will see where the military is going to ultimately go with her and her exemption from the vaccine requirement. Those are my thoughts. Tell me what you think. I'd love to hear from you. Put your comments below. If you like what I have done, and if you like my content, I just ask that you'd please subscribe and hit like. If you don't like what I've said, feel free to hit dislike as well. Even though according to YouTube, that really doesn't matter much anymore because we're not going to disclose the likes and dislikes. Anyway, thank you for your time. Take care. God bless. We'll see you next time. If you've made it this far in my video, I sincerely thank you for taking time out of your day to watch the entirety of my video. If you like my content, please hit the like button and turn your bell on. You'll receive a notification anytime I post a new video. Also, if you wouldn't mind, hit the subscribe button. You'll find the link up here. And feel free to watch one of my other videos that I will have pointed over here. Thanks again for taking time out of your day. It really does mean a lot that you would spend part of your day and your valuable time to watch one of my videos. Take care. God bless. We'll see you next time.